Hello, everyone. I am Nancy Hansley Larzo, and I just want to take time to welcome you to Vision Speaks podcast. And I am so elated to be with you all on today because I always want to make a difference in the life of someone. And so I'm just so happy to share this time with you. And on today, my topic for today is on mental illness in a crisis situation. The importance, must I say, the importance of mental illness in a crisis situation. We all know that now that we're still in this pandemic, we're dealing with COVID-19 and as well as other variants, but we're still standing. And we can thank God that we're still standing. However, there are so many people in this world who deal with mental issues, and we just thank God, for taking this time out to help someone on today. And my guest on today is none other than Tina Simpson. And Tina, I just want to take time to welcome you on Vision Speaks podcast. And it's good to see you, my sister. I'm always happy to see you. And so why don't you give a wave to the audience? All right, y'all, wave it. Tina Simpson on today. And Tina, what is it? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and read your bio. And I thank you for getting that to me. And once I read your bio, if you will, you can tell the audience what you want them to remember about Tina Simpson. So, Tina Simpson is a resident of Beaumont, Texas, and a mother of three. She's a woman who lived the experience in both substance use and the mental health area. She has and continues to use her own experiences with both substance abuse and the mental health area to help people in her community. Tina has worked in the mental health field for 8 years as peer specialist supervisor, and she is also a Christian counselor. She loves the Lord and says he saved a wretch like her to be used by him. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, I welcome to Vision Speaks and to you, none other than Tina Simpson. So Tina, tell them, what is it that you want to be remembered for?
Well, first of all, Minister Nancy, I'd like to thank you for having me tonight. This is Mental Health Awareness Month, so I feel that you bringing this podcast is very important. As for what I would have people to remember me by, I'm very humbled by my experiences, and I think that the thing that I would like people to remember me by, or to know me as, just a woman with lived experience who enjoys sharing her experience, strength, and hope with others. Just to be the beacon of light, to let other people know that you can recover from whatever it is you're dealing with, whether it's mental health or whether it's substance abuse. And so, just a spokesperson, for lived experience.
All right, that sounds good, sis. And that is good to know because, like you said in your bio, you have lived these things. And so, who better to tell us about these things than someone who has already experienced some of these things? So, tell us a little bit about. I know you said that there are 200 classified forms of mental health illness, ranging from clinical depression, bipolar, schizophrenia, anxiety, and paranoid. Can you elaborate on those for us?
Well, it's just basically like you said. When you look at mental health diagnosis, there are such a broad scope. People can deal with anything from attention deficit, again, like you said, bipolar, schizophrenia, PTSD, social anxiety, things like those are prevalent in our society today. And one of the main problems, or one of the main issues that I see, is people not really willing to have that conversation, about possibly having a mental health diagnosis.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for that information. Now, what can you tell us about now? What's going on with mental health right now during this crisis situation? I know things kind of have escalated for them, and we know that a big percentage of our population suffer with mental illness.
Hmm. And so I can say the biggest thing that I see right now happening is mental health awareness is taking a bigger platform in society. We've had athletes, who have come forth, stressing how important their mental health is, to them. And I think when we lost Robin Williams, I think that that really began to raise awareness to the idea that mental health illnesses are real. They aren't these things that we could just, sweep under the rug, or we could just, just get over, in a matter of time.
Right.
If there is mental health illness involved, we want to encourage people to get the help that they need.
Right. That's right. Okay. What about, let's talk about the stigma surrounding mental illness.
Well, there is an ugly stigma. When a lot of times when you think about mental health, there was a time when it was described as mental health and mental retardation. But today we look at it as mental health and mental recovery. No one really wants to admit that they have a mental health diagnosis. Just
Right.
like most addicts, don't really want to admit that they have a problem. And a lot of times when you think about a person having a mental health diagnosis, history has painted this picture of people that are out of their mind. And a very ugly picture of mental illness has been painted, over the years. And so I think that that is one of the main problems that is causing people that really need to get help because they don't want to be labeled as crazy or, psychotic or, anything like that. And so that's really the struggle, getting people to understand that they are not their diagnosis,
Right.
and you're not the only one,
Right.
and that there is help.
Yes. Okay. Well, Tina, why don't you tell us about your situation and when you lived through it with having, if you don't mind, if that's not too much, what was your experience like?
Well, I'm going to say that my experience with having I am what they consider dual diagnosis, where I had a mental health diagnosis along with a substance abuse issue. And, having both of those, you never really know what came first, the chicken or the egg. And I know for me, from my experience, a lot of the depression and things that I had to deal with, due to my substance abuse, or getting to a place to where I had my substance abuse under control, but then my mental, I started having issues, mentally, and so it was always a very delicate balance for me, to make sure that I treated myself as a whole person,
Right.
not separated my substance abuse issues from my mental health issues, you know, um, being fortunate enough to have the education and experience and just the mentorship of some of the people that I've had, on my journey, has just really made this a growing experience for me. God has healed me and He's delivered me from many things, but I think that we all battle with something.
That's right. That's right,
I think that
sis.
we all battle with something. And so, just being able to encourage people and let them know that, I've lived through it. God brought me out of it. He provided me with the healing that I need. He could do the same thing for you.
That's exactly right. Now, a lot of people are silent on this issue. A lot of people, they don't want people to know that they have certain issues, and so they have a tendency to keep it to themselves, and they have it all bottled in. So, what would you say to people like that? Even loved ones, they could know that something may be wrong with one of their loved ones or someone they know. However, because the person is not opening up to talk about their situation, then it kind of leaves the person who is concerned and, like wanting to know, well, what's really going on. So,
Right.
how do they break the silence?
Well, I think that you have to be very careful, when you're dealing with something like that, because you want your loved ones to get the help that they need. But by the same token, you don't want to make them feel like they're damaged goods.
Right.
You know, and a lot of times people are afraid to open up about the issues that they have
Mm-hmm.
because of how our loved ones look at us.
Mm-hmm.
You know, in our culture, you didn't talk about having a mental health diagnosis. You kept
Right.
that kind of stuff, hush hush. If
Mm-hmm.
you had a family member that had a mental health diagnosis, you didn't want anybody, to know that.
That's
So that
right.
was
That's
something that
right.
was, very seldom spoke of. And so when you talked about going and seeing a psychiatrist or a shrink or a therapist, that was like, oh no, we don't do that.
Yes.
We pray and we believe God, for healing. And yeah,
Mm-hmm.
but God also gives us wisdom. And so if there's help that's needed, you want to pray about your approach,
Right.
with your loved one. And when you're approaching with it, you want to have a plan.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to just talk to them about it. You want to be able to give them something after that conversation is over with that would lead them to continue. You
Mm-hmm.
know,
That
so
sounds good. Yes. All right then. Okay. So, how should, like, for instance, if we are approaching someone who's dealing with mental illness, but let's say we don't know a person, how should a person that's unaware of a person who's dealing with that, how should we handle a person like that? Because I know they have a program now. For instance, if there's a problem, they get in trouble or something, if you've been diagnosed as being mentally ill, whereas the police, they are willing to work with certain groups to come and help that person instead of locking that person up. If a crime has been committed or whatever the case may be, don't they have some type of help in place for a person like that? Whereas if I walked upon a situation and let's say the person could be mentally ill and I not know, but they're acting in a way that's inappropriate, would the police know how to handle a person like that?
well, we have such things called mental health deputies, and from 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 my standpoint and from what I've experienced, the local police agencies need a lot of help with being able to identify when they come up on a scene whether a person is under the influence or whether they are actually having a mental health breakdown or a psychotic episode. Um, you know, mental illness doesn't really have a face.
Okay.
So you can't just really say, oh, well, I'm around this person and they seem kind of strange, and so maybe they may have a mental health diagnosis. It generally don't work like that. It's behaviors, and it's really you being around a person.
Mm-hmm.
But to answer your question, if you were to walk up on a situation, and I do it all the time where I see a person might be in the parking lot and they're cursing really loud and they're
Mm-hmm.
being real belligerent, but nobody is around them.
Okay.
That's pretty much a safe bet to say that they have a mental health diagnosis. Um, if you're able to get in contact with a mental health deputy, to get them maybe to come on the scene or to maybe, just to show up and be present, I would advise you to do that. But if you have no experience with it, and if you're not able to deal with get a mental health deputy on the scene, I would advise you not to even engage,
Right.
because depending upon what the situation is, the person could be volatile.
Right.
They may
Mm-hmm.
walk up and say something that might trigger the situation and make it worse.
Mm-hmm.
So I would just tread lightly,
Mm-hmm.
and I would try to seek, some assistance, if I come across a situation like that.
Okay. Now, what about this? I was thinking as you were talking, Um, what are some of the signs or red lights that people who are not aware of people who have such difficulties, who are dealing with mental illness, what are some of the signs that we can look for?
Okay, so I'm not speaking from a professional standpoint. I don't have any degrees. I can only speak from my lived experience. A lot of times, people that are around people that have mental health diagnoses, they see the signs. If a person is dealing with depression, you might have a period where they go under the radar. They don't take any phone calls. They're not eating. They're not sleeping. They're not taking company. Um, it all depends on what the diagnosis is.
Okay.
You know, so it's kind of hard to say what the signs are. It's just like with a person that has substance abuse issues.
Right.
Certain things they do, they might start stealing, or you might notice a change in their appearance. Where they're not quite taking care of themselves, like they used to. And you just see in some cases you'll see like a deterioration. And then some other cases you'll see heightened senses or paranoia.
Yes.
They always feel like somebody's following them, or they feel like somebody's always watching them. So like I said, it just all depends on what the diagnosis is and what the person is dealing with at that time will kind of determine, the signs, that they may give off. So it would vary.
Okay, thank you for that information. Most importantly, you said that they need to know that they are not their diagnosis. Can you elaborate on that?
Well, a lot of times when we get a diagnosis, and for me, I like to talk about it from both sides because, like I said, I'm dual. It's along the lines of when I go to an AA meeting, or when I would go to an AA meeting, I would say, "Hi, my name is Tina, and I'm an addict." Or "Hi, my name is Tina, and I'm in recovery." Well, a person with a mental health diagnosis is not going to say, "Hi, my name is Tina and I'm a depression," or "Hi, I'm Tina and I have anxiety." We don't want to label ourselves our diagnosis. If that makes sense.
That makes sense.
You're human, but you have a diagnosis of a certain mental illness. You are not that mental illness, if that makes sense.
That makes a lot of sense. Well, what about situations whereas someone may see the signs of mental illness, but the individual himself or herself may be in denial, and but you could tell by the actions that they are having issues with mental illness. However, to them, they're saying, "I'm not that." So how could you get help for someone like that? Because in order to get the help, don't you have to admit that you have the problem?
Again, there's that slippery slope. In the field that I work in, people come in to get into services. But when they're interviewed, they don't answer the questions from a seat of a person who has a diagnosis. They answer the questions from a seat of a person that's aware, because they're in denial. Okay. And a lot of times it's really hard to get a person to come to grips with the fact that they have a mental health diagnosis and accept it, and then be willing to seek the help for it. And again, like I said, it's one of those slippery slopes. I've had experiences with family members who I knew had mental health diagnoses. And the only thing that I could do is share my experience with that particular issue with them, or show them the things that are discussed with them, the things that I've seen. But at the end of the day, if they don't see it, they don't see it. And it's sad because a lot of people are in denial about having a mental health diagnosis. and their symptoms are getting worse,
That's exactly right.
you
Yes.
know, as they get older. And,
Yes.
and it's sad to say that I'll say in those instances, you want to pray for God to intervene. You know, you want to pray for God to show them for Himself, for themselves, you know, that it could possibly be a problem. Or bring someone in that has education behind it, that may be able to sit down and talk to them. Because a lot of times we don't receive from our family members that we are
Right.
sick. You know, we won't receive that. But somebody else from the outside could come in and give that same point of view, and they may say, aha, I possibly could have a problem. You
Well,
know,
would you recommend, let's say, in dealing with a situation like that, I heard you say pray. Would you recommend getting a support group?
definitely,
You know,
definitely.
because,
Same thing with a person in recovery from substance abuse. You need support. Listen, people that have mental health diagnoses and substance abuse issues, they cannot recover alone. You know, you need supporters. You know, people that are in your corner, people that are going to advocate for you. You know, people that are going to be there for you. You
yes.
know, people that'll be that voice. You know, I found situations where people had issues, and when it came down time for them to speak help, they allowed their supporters to speak for them.
Awesome. That's good.
You know, because they've lost their voice.
Yes.
It might be kind of hard for them to explain,
Yes.
you know, what they're going through or what they're feeling, but the supporter who's going through that with them, you know, can sit in and can let the doctor know, hey, these are some of the behaviors that he exhibits. You know, he get up in the middle of the night and he's walking the streets all hours of the night. You know, I can't
Yes.
sleep because my front door is open, and he has no recollection of this. You know, just little things like that. So support is very important because
That's
they need to
good.
know that somebody's there for them. You know,
Right.
so yeah.
Okay, and in the meantime, you just continue loving and praying and
Oh, definitely.
get outside help if possible.
Yes, if
But
possible. If
if that
possible.
fails, if all that should fail, you just have to keep praying, I guess, and keep moving forward and just keep on loving.
Well, again, like I said, when you talk about mental health or when you decide that you want to talk about that with somebody, you want to have a plan. You know, I would tell people to look in your local area and find the mental health agencies there. You know, find someone, you know, to talk to. You know, tell them about the situation that you're dealing with. You know, some people can be so be gravely ill with their mental health illness, to where families have to step in and get power of attorney. You know, to actually, I hate to use this word, but to have them, you know, to have to go in to the hospital to get
Yes.
to get the help that they
That
need
they need.
because they
Yes.
refuse to get it on their own. You know, and like I said, it's such a broad, you know, not everybody who has a mental health diagnosis ends up having to go to the hospital,
Right.
you know, something like that. So like I said, it really varies, and it
Right.
depends upon the diagnosis and the situation and the person. It varies.
Okay, well, thank you for that information, sis. What about, we also said in some cultures, talking about mental health is taboo.
Yeah,
Most people don't want to admit there's a problem, which is what we're pretty much saying.
right.
So to me, in order to get help with any problem that you have, whether it's mental health or whatever the case may be, you have to first admit you have
Admit
a
it.
problem. So unless you can get the person to admit that they have a problem, then help could be,
Kind of hard to do.
yes.
You know, kind of hard to get because you have to remember you're dealing with adults. In my field, you know, we deal with adults, and they have rights.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and if they feel that this isn't a treatment that they need or they want, or um, say they get help for their mental health diagnosis, and they
Yes.
feel like the medication that they're taking isn't working,
Mm-hmm.
you can't force it. You know, and that, and a lot of times, especially when you're dealing with people who are co-occurring, you know, if they're not taking care of their mental health or they're not taking their medication, they know how to self-medicate.
Mm.
You know, and then the self-medication is usually drugs, alcohol, you know,
Yes,
something
it
of
is.
that.
Yeah.
And so it's like the state of that person's mental, you know, it's kind of,
Mm-hmm.
you know, you don't want to self-medicate, but you don't want to take the medication, you know.
Right. Mm-hmm.
You know, so it's like I said, it's just a very delicate thing. And like I said, even if there is no substance abuse involved,
Right.
you know, it's still the same. It's still the same thing, you know. So I, as an educator, as a supporter, I would educate myself, and like I said, I would seek professional help for my loved one, and I would ask them the best course, you know, to go with dealing with them and their mental illness.
Okay, that sounds good. Well, I know, like we said, we have so many people with problems who don't want to admit it. However, there are some places that don't we have certain programs
Oh
that
yeah.
will help people who have been diagnosed as such. Can you talk about some of the programs that are offered? Are you aware of any that
Well,
are offered?
in the Golden Triangle area, I mean, there are several mental health clinics. You have Spindletop, you have Legacy, just to name a few.
Okay.
You know, if they have Medicaid or private insurance, you
Mm-hmm.
know, they can always, you know, try to find a doctor that way. But the best thing to do is to try to encourage them to go in and to be screened.
Okay, so
You
is that
know,
step number one?
that's
Like
step
if
number one.
you know of someone who's that way, you talk to that person and say, look, uh, just talk to them about the situation, and I've noticed this and that, but you really need to get the help. So where would the first place be once you
They,
talk to the person and let's
you would
say
want
they
them, like I
agree for
said, you
help?
want to have a plan. So if you bring up the conversation, if you're talking to them about it, you want to have a place for them to go. So
Okay.
you all want to already be in research.
So where is that place? Do you know of the place that would be the
Again,
first?
you have Spindletop, you have
Okay.
Legacy. I mean, you just, you know, if you
So
have
that would be
injuries,
the
you know,
first
you
step.
can, yeah, but the most important thing is to get diagnosed.
Right.
And I always tell people when you go in to get diagnosed or if you're going in with a loved one, I always encourage them to be honest.
Right.
If you're hearing voices, tell a doctor you're hearing voices. If you're seeing things, tell the doctor you're seeing things. You know,
Mm-hmm.
don't go in there and try to smooth over the questions that they're answering you because they're asking you those questions so that they can get an accurate diagnosis.
Okay.
You know, like I said, sometimes, you know, people go in and when they're being assessed, you know, they don't answer the questions truthfully. And so they come out without a diagnosis. And then the family is saying, well, what happened? You know, I know that something is wrong. So I just took him in for intake and they telling me that he doesn't have a diagnosis.
Wow.
Probably because the way they answered the assessment.
Probably because what?
Probably because of the way they answered the questions on the
Okay.
assessment.
Okay.
Just not being able to be honest. And it's hard for some people.
Now is that the screening part? When
Yes.
you do the
Yes.
diagnosis?
No,
Okay.
you get the diagnosis after the screening.
Okay. The diagnosis after screening. And
Yes. So
um,
So you
go
go
ahead.
in for an intake and they screen you and they ask you a series of questions.
Mm-hmm.
And the result from those questions that they ask you gives that therapist or that doctor or that person what your diagnosis is.
Okay. All right. So now, once you do the screening, the diagnosis is done. Then what's next? What's the next step?
They follow up with a doctor,
Okay.
you know, and they commit to their recovery. You know, they commit to keeping their doctor's appointments. They commit to taking their medication. They commit to getting peer support, you know, and talking things out. You know, because sometimes medication, you know, is good, but sometimes a lot of the issues that we have, if we talk about it and we're
Right.
able to process it, with somebody else, that helps as well.
Right.
So, and I always encourage them, once you start getting help, stay on that wheel. A lot of
Right.
times a person can get diagnosed and they can start taking the medication and their mind will tell them, oh, well, we're better now. You don't
Okay.
have, you don't have to keep taking the medication. And the person will listen. And then a month, three, two
Later.
weeks down the
Yes.
road, they're having crying spells, or, just all of a sudden they're off. And it's
Yes.
because they stopped taking the medication and now their symptoms are returning.
Right. Okay. So, and the reason I'm asking this, Miss Simpson, is because I trust that there is somebody out there who may be dealing with this, and they just might make up their mind, hey, I'm going to
Definitely.
get some help for this. Or a
Yeah.
family member may just be watching,
Yeah.
whoever, and they may just, we may have some people to say, hey, I want to try this. I'm
Right.
tired of going through what I'm going through, and I want to, I want to get help for myself. There may
Right.
just be that person out there, so that's why I'm asking these questions. What are
Yeah.
the steps and what have you?
Yeah.
And so, as far as the doctor, once they are screened, diagnosed, and then they need to see a doctor do the who appoints the doctor? Certain doctors
It just
appointed
depends.
to these
It,
people.
it yeah, it
Does the
depends where they
family come up
go.
with the doctor?
No, it just depends upon where they go.
Oh, where they go? Okay.
They can go to a clinic that can have 5 therapists.
Okay.
It just depends upon
And after the
who
doctor,
they're having for a doctor.
okay, and after seeing the doctor, what's the next step?
Again, it would just be committing to your
Visits.
recovery.
Okay.
I mean, there begins the journey.
Okay.
You
And so
know,
maybe on a
there
monthly
begins the
basis.
life, there begins the journey of recovery.
Okay, I like that. The journey of recovery. That
Mhm.
sounds really good. And I'm just so happy, to talk about this because, like I said earlier, there are some people who actually you can see where they've had problems or they're having problems, but they do not believe in their mind all is well. In their mind, you cannot tell them any different, and you can see them acting out in certain behaviors,
Mhm.
but in their mind,
And
I'm
that's a
okay.
part of having a mental illness.
Okay.
Like I said, really no different from a person having a substance abuse problem. Their life has become unmanageable. They're selling things out of the house. They can't keep money, but you can't tell them that they have a problem.
Right.
Everything on the outside screams problem, but because we're looking through the mirror of illusion,
Right. Uh huh.
it's kind of hard, sometimes to face the fact that, hey, I have a problem and I need help. And a lot of times people are scared to ask for help.
Right. Okay. One other thing I want to add is that we said something about the Jesus will fix it syndrome. The
Hmm.
Jesus will fix it syndrome. I guess some people they say, well, I've done all I can do and what have you. Jesus has to fix this situation. And knowing that prayer does change things, what would be your take on that? A person who's really now, okay, we've haven't turned to the Lord with this problem. What is your take on that?
Well, I believe that
Let's talk. Well, you can even include the spiritual part about it
well,
because there's a
that's
natural
what I was going to
side.
leave with, knowing that God is a healer
That's right.
and He's a deliverer. I mean, we know that off the top,
That's right.
but also God gives us wisdom. Um, and if taking medication is going to lessen your symptoms,
Mm,
and if they're going to make you better,
right.
then I would advise people to take the medication. You have some people that they don't want to take medication. Well, they have herbs. They have other things that a person can do,
Mm-hmm.
to help them get their symptoms under control if they don't want
Right.
to take medication. A
Mm-hmm.
lot of people that I come in contact with, when they've been diagnosed with a mental illness, the first thing they say is, "I don't want to take medication."
Mm.
And so you want to try to convince them or get them to see how taking the medication is going to help them.
Okay.
You know, and like I said, not all mental health illnesses require medication. You know, so just again, it all depends.
Okay, that's good. Now, I want to talk some more about the spiritual part of it because, we know about deliverance.
Right.
And some people, they haven't heard of it or don't even know about it. However, some people with mental health issues have been delivered and they have been set free and they don't have to deal with it anymore. But like I heard you say about the medication, well, if that's what you need, then take the medication. And
Yeah,
I agree with
and I'm
that.
gonna tell people again, you seek God.
That's right.
You know, you seek God. And if you have that connection with God, and if that is something that God feels that you need, you know, to be a part of your healing, he'll you'll know.
Right.
You'll know. I believe that you'll know. When I knew that I had a mental health diagnosis, I knew that I had to address what was
Right.
going on with me. There were times when I went years with no substance in my body and no medication.
Mm.
Okay, and then something happened.
Wow.
Sometimes we can get so lax in the things that God has brought us out of that we're not really um, committing to our recovery. We always leave the door open for the enemy to come back in.
Okay.
That's why I
Yes.
said that begins the journey. Because just like with substance abuse, a person can have a mental health relapse as well.
Mm-hmm.
So
Also, what do you think about even if a person gets on the medication, go through the process, a support team would be good for them to have as well, even through that process, because I can see where people are going to need to be encouraged. People are going to need to know, hey, you're coming out of this. You're going to make it, even if they have to continue on the medication.
Right.
You're going to make it. We're here for you.
Right. Well, in the field that I'm in, we have a thing called peer support. And what that is that those are people with similar diagnoses who support each other.
Right.
In this arena, everybody is the same.
Mm.
And they use their experiences to heal each other. Whereas a person who's coming in who's never really dealt with their depression, they'll meet a person who is managing the symptoms of depression. And that person can help them. Because who better to help a person with depression than somebody who is conquering it or who is coming out of it or who's learning how to manage their symptoms.
Yes.
So peer support is very important. I always encourage people, find your tribe.
Mm-hmm.
Find that group of people that will understand you and what you're going through.
Well, there's one thing you said about when you mentioned depression. I thought about, and it's not having to do with mental illness. However, some children, this day and time, some children are depressed from being bullied. I want to bring that up, although because depression is not good. And you have some of these young children who are being bullied, and it's causing them to be depressed, which could lead to them having a mental illness on down the line. So I just don't know. Some people just need, to understand. For all we know, some of these children could be suffering from mental illness, and they're going through depression, and other kids are bothering them. I'm talking about the younger people now, and mental illness, because some of them do suffer with that. Lots of young children. So have you witnessed many?
I'm going to say again, me not being a professional, and I only really speak from my lived experience, and most of my experience is with adults. However, I know that a lot of the mental illnesses that we have as adults stem from trauma as a child.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
So it would be safe to say that depression can stem from a lot of areas for the adolescents.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it could be things going on at home.
Right.
You know, traumatic experiences that they're dealing with at home that's going unidentified,
Right.
you know, by teachers or clinicians or whatever, you know, the case may be. So depression is an equal opportunity destroyer.
Yes.
You know, it has no race, age, or anything like that. And like I said, a lot of the mental health diagnoses that most of us deal with now, they have a thing called the ACE test where it talks about trauma. And it addresses the things that you dealt with as a child that never got treated, that led into your adulthood,
Wow.
that
Okay.
causes the jails and the institutions and, you know, all of these other things to come into play because there was trauma that never got addressed as a child. No, like walking with your limp,
Right.
like Meshibafet when he was dropped.
Yes.
You know, as the lady was
Okay.
running,
Yes. Yes.
you
Yes.
know, a
Yes.
lot of us as children were
Right.
dropped,
That's right.
you know,
That's
and
right.
we carry this, you know, and I can
Mm-hmm.
contribute that, like I said, to me, you know, my substance abuse, my mental health diagnosis. You know, I didn't just wake up one day with
Right.
these issues.
Mm.
They started somewhere.
That's right.
They started somewhere. And when I came into the knowledge of the things that I battled with, then it became my responsibility to take care of Tina. You know, I couldn't do it for anybody else. And I knew that the fixing that I need, only God could give it to me. But I had to go to the treatment centers and I had to go to the institute. I had to go through these
Oh
things,
yes, 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 yes.
you know, as a result of those diagnoses.
Right. And look at you now.
To God be the
Awesome,
glory.
awesome, awesome.
Having a ride, still
Yes.
work in progress, you
Yes.
know.
Yes.
Just love what I do, you know, being able to encourage other people, you know, and just for people to know that having a diagnosis is not the end of the world. You
That's right.
know,
And I think just by you talking on tonight, a lot of people should be encouraged because here
yeah.
you are. You don't even look like what you've been through. And hey, there is
When
hope.
I tell
There is
you
hope.
just a snippet, when I tell people
Mm.
that my state of mind at once upon a time in my life
Mm.
was so dark.
Wow.
When I would walk the streets and talk to myself, you know, just all of the dark things that God had to bring me out of, you know, the depression,
Mm-hmm.
you know, just everything. You know, I think there was times when I was probably, you know, I had a bunch of different symptoms that was brought on because of my substance abuse.
Yes.
You know, a lot of my psychosis and a lot of the things that I would experience, a lot of that was brought on to my substance abuse. So, like I said, you know, it's a real delicate balance. When
Yes.
you talk about addressing mental health, the right avenue, you know, and the right approach. You know, I always say, you know, first and above all, you pray.
Right. Okay. Mm-hmm. Well, let's talk about this, Tina. We have here. What about through education? You said more people are seeking help for their symptoms. Now it's not just a white thing; it affects us all.
Yeah.
So let's talk about education. You said, "Hi, through education, people are seeking help."
Well, now that it's okay to say the word depression, and now that it's okay to say the word bipolar,
Mm.
okay, when you say those things, I tell a lot of the people that I work with, if you've been given a diagnosis, Google it.
Mm-hmm.
Google your diagnosis. If they're giving you medication, Google it. Find out what you're taking and what it's supposed to be treating as far as your mental health is concerned. People can be misdiagnosed,
Right. Mm-hmm.
and that could be another reason why sometimes people are not getting better.
Mm-hmm.
You know, So yeah, I think that plays a big part in it.
So if a person feel that they have been misdiagnosed and they see that they're not getting
Get a
better,
second
then
opinion.
what should they do?
Get a second
From
opinion.
a different doctor, see a
Get,
different.
yes,
Oh, that's
yes.
great.
In some
Now, how do they
cases,
go about doing that?
again, it depends on where they go.
Okay.
I know some facilities will allow a person, if they weren't satisfied with the diagnosis, to do a second opinion. You'll see a different doctor.
Okay.
And so it just all depends. A lot of times, again, having that support network, when you take a loved one in who you know is mentally ill and they're telling you no, they're not, get a second opinion.
All right, then that's good advice. Okay, so those of you who are listening, you hear what Tina is saying. She's not speaking from a person with a degree. She's told you that. She's telling you based on her experiences. And I think she has very good advice because by living through this, hey, she's awesome.
And then being in the field for 8 years, going on 9 years,
Oh, yes.
I feel like God put me in that arena because all of the things that He had to bring me out of. So I'm able to help people from a non-judgment seat.
Right.
When they come in and they're talking about the things that they're going through, I'm able to have empathy and sympathy.
Okay.
A lot of times, sad to say, that in the medical mental health field, some people are in it just for the money. They don't really care whether the person recovers. When you think about medication being a big business, you have people that have mental health diagnoses that are taking 9 and 10 pills a day. So again, I tell people educate yourself. Google, find out as much information about your diagnosis as you can. Find out as much about your therapist.
Yes.
As you can. Because you have heal doctors. You can go in and, tell them that you have the symptoms of a certain thing, just to get a certain medication. That's another dangerous thing that goes on with mental health diagnosis. It brings a lot of the abuse that's happening with the medication, with the prescribed medication.
Right.
So it's
well, let's talk about children again because, like I said, some children are suffering with mental health issues, and as long as they're small or whatever, let's say even middle school age, if the parents are seeing symptoms in their children, what advice would you give to the parents? Because if they seeing it at home and then it's being acted out at school too, then what would be your advice? What would you recommend?
Get some help.
And go through that same process.
A lot of the issues, and again, I'm speaking from experience. When I put one of my children on medication, ADHD at a young age,
Okay.
I thought as a parent I was doing the right thing. This particular child used the medication all the way up into high school. Didn't have any problems, made good grades. They were diagnosed with ADHD with hypoactivity. So what ended up happening was when they went off to college, they stopped taking the medication. They had been on medication from the 3rd grade to 12th grade. They enter into adulthood and I don't need the medication anymore. They start self-medicating. And again, they just begin to unravel. Because now, not only are you dealing with that mental health, now you're dealing with that substance.
Is this that dual diagnosis?
Yes, ma'am.
What you're talking about?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. So you have parents that don't want to put their children on medication today because of that. At one time, every child that had a behavior problem had ADHD.
Right.
But the problem was But the problem was, if you were diagnosed as an adolescent with ADHD, when you became an adult, that classification had to change. Because for whatever reason, they don't like to treat adults for ADHD.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? So
Yes.
if a child has been treated for ADHD up until the time he's 18, 19, and then his diagnosis has to change.
Yes.
You know, in order for them, in some cases,
Yes.
to continue getting treatment.
Wow.
So, I mean, you know, like I said, when you talk about mental health and just being aware that you can have, we can talk for months, you know, on this subject alone.
Yes.
You know, on the ups, the downs, you know, but the most important thing, you know, I want to drive home is if you feel like you have a mental health diagnosis or illness,
Right.
get you some help. If you have people around you that love you, that you know love you, and they're saying, hey, we're concerned about you. You know, we're here for you. You know, and we'll stand by you through the process. We'll go with you. You know, we'll take every step that you need to take to get yourself some help.
That's
You know,
right.
take the advice from your loved ones because they love us. You
That's
know,
right.
they see things in us sometimes that we can't see for ourselves.
right.
You know, and so if they're telling you out of care and concern, hey, I'm concerned about you. You know, I'm seeing this, that, you know, behaving a certain type of way. At least consider it.
And that's good advice. So, can you name those places again here in Beaumont that
Oh, well, just
people can
to
go?
name, you have Spindletop, you have Legacy. Those are the ones that I'm most familiar with. You have Fannin Behavioral Center here in Beaumont.
Yes.
You know that if a person is experiencing severe symptoms,
Okay.
you know, and you want to get them help, you know, you can take them to any one of the emergency rooms here in Beaumont, and you can let them know, you know, that you need a mental health assistance. You know, especially if a person's gotten to the point to where, you know, they need to be admitted because of the things that they're doing. They become a threat, you know what I'm saying, to themselves or others.
Yes.
You know, when it gets serious like that, then you really got to take precautions to keep not only yourself safe, but the person safe.
Right. And I do think that this whole thing about mental health need to be taken more serious than we're taking it. And I think we need to, you know, have more plans in place, especially in the school system, wherever, because things, you know, there is hope. And like we said earlier at the beginning of the show, there are so many millions of people suffering with mental illness.
Yeah.
And I just thank you so much, Ms. Simpson, for joining me on today on this podcast, talking about the importance. You're so welcome. Talking about the importance of mental health in a crisis situation, and we're just so happy to have you on. I hope that. Okay, go ahead.
Let me say this before I close. Your mental health is very important.
Right.
And sometimes for some of us, taking care of our mental health is taking care of ourselves. Sometimes we have to take time out to take care of us and to love on us and to make sure that we're doing everything that we can to keep ourselves
That's
healthy.
right. That's right.
You know?
Yes. And then, you know, I like it that you said that because a lot of times we're so busy trying to help others that we forget about ourselves and we're trying to pour from an empty cup.
Yes,
Pour
ma'am.
from an empty cup,
Yes,
and you
ma'am.
cannot pour from an empty cup.
You know, there are so many small things that people can do to help their mental health, wellness. Things like going to the park.
Yes.
Things like going for bike rides. You know, things like
Skating.
you know, skating. You know, just getting out of your comfort zone.
Right.
And sometimes doing those things that we used to love when we were young. Like I'll go to the park and jump on a swing in a heartbeat. You know? it makes me feel a certain type of way. You know, it brings back a certain type of nostalgia or a certain type of lightness.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I think that, as a society, we really need to learn how to step back,
Mm-hmm.
and take a look, at where we are, and adjust some of the things that may be going on in our life so that we can have longevity, so that we'll have a healthy mental state of mind.
Right. Okay, then. So you have done a great job, Miss Simpson, and I thank you once again. It was a pleasure having you on this podcast.
Anytime.
You have given us some very, very, very valuable information, for us to grow on. And I thank you because that's what Vision Speak is all about.
Right.
Vision Speaks is all about encouraging, giving some information out to help someone make it that next step of the way. So you have done that so well on tonight. I thank you, and I will have you join me again.
Thank you
so much.
Thank you.
God bless you.
God bless you.